Alright, so I'm Anna, and I'm going to be recording a passage analysis from Jane Eyre, the proposal scene on page 265 and a little bit on the top of 266. This passage mainly is not the actual proposal scene, but before, when Jane is alone in the garden. So a lot of this will be how Charlotte Bronte uses nature as a force in Jane Eyre. And just to set some context, this scene is right after Jane, So Jane arrives back at Thornfield after having gone back to Gateshead for the funeral, and she and Rochester have been growing closer. Of course, she still thinks that Rochester is going to marry Blanche, but that will be resolved really soon. Alright, so let's start. A splendid midsummer shone over England, skies so pure, sun so radiant, as if were then seen in long succession, seldom favour, even singly, our wave-girt land, as if a band of Italian days had come from the south, like a flock of glorious passenger birds, and lightened to the rest of them on the cliffs of Albion. The hay was all got in, the fields round Thornfield were green and shorn, the road white and baked, the trees were in their dark prime, hedge and wood, full-leaved and deeply tinted, contrasted well with the sunny hue of the cleared meadows between. Then there's a short paragraph following this that doesn't have a lot of the nature metaphor that I was looking for, so I skipped over it. And I picked back up with, "It was now the sweetest hour of the 24, day its fervid fires had wasted, and dew fell cool on panting plain and scorched summit, where the sun had gone down in simple state, pure of the pomp of clouds, spread a solemn purple, burning with the light of red jewel and furnace flame at one point, on one hill peak, and extending high and wide, soft and still softer, over half heaven. The east had its own charm of fine deep blue, and its own modest gem, a rising and solitary star. Soon it would boast the moon, but she was yet beneath the horizon." Right, and diving in. So we open the first sentence, "a splendid midsummer," and this is significant because so much of Jane Eyre involves this imagery of ice and cold. And in fact, when Jane arrives at Thornfield, it's icy, it's cold, Rochester isn't even there yet. But right now, it's the smack dab middle of summer, very significant time of year, very pretty, very nice. And so that's mainly just to say that they've come a long way. It's not winter. Her relationship with Rochester has come a long way. Yep. The next line, "skies so pure," I like a lot because I think it's saying that it's kind of like a blank canvas for Jane, that she's at peace mostly. This is a coming of age novel, and she's grown up a lot. She's in a good place with Rochester. Skies are pure, no obstacles in her way right now, or so she thinks, but right now it's looking kind of good for her. Sun so radiant, again, just a really beautiful day. Things are looking up for Jane. The sun might be able to represent passion there, but it might be a little bit of a stretch. Just a lot of better examples of that. This next line is very symbolic because in the Victorian age, women are compared to birds a lot, so in romantic writing, birds will represent women and mostly freedom. So this line says, "like a flock of glorious passenger birds." And I did a little bit of research, and passenger birds are actually just pigeons, but the main thing about them is that they're migrating a lot. So that's what you would note about them, and I think this is signifying that Jane's journey is kind of taking a step forward, her freedom. I think she's kind of giving herself some freedom now. She's cleared the slate back at Gateshead with all her old relatives. She's come to her own, she makes her own money. She's in a good place. She is like a flock of glorious passenger birds moving forward. And then we get into some more of the actual nature of the garden. The fields around Thornfield are green and shorn, so they're fully in bloom. Nature, a lot in Jane Eyre, I think, represents for women just the openness and the maturity, and I think this is showing that Jane is open to something new, that she has matured, she has blossomed. I think that it's significant. This is the midsummer, this is kind of the center of the novel, and Jane has kind of actually come of her own. The trees are in their prime, so again, it's just, we're here, we're ready, everything's matured. They're full-leaved and deeply tinted, again points back to the themes of Jane being fully developed, ready, in a really good place. So these would all be some examples of figurative language with the way that Bronte describes the landscape, and symbolism with the birds, and a little bit of the nature. Right, the next paragraph, it was the sweetest hour of the 24-day. So again, things were looking up for Jane. This is a good time. Right now, she's very relaxed. She's not thinking about Blanche Ingram. She's not thinking about her problems. She's having a good time. Next is some alliteration of the panting plain and scorched summit, which is basically what it is not doing right now, because midsummer, that'll be pretty hot. But it's sunset right now. The weather's nice. Everything about nature just kind of coming together in the best way. So again, we have this word pure to describe the sky, pure of clouds, so no clouds. I think this kind of means, again, obstacles are out of Jane's way, or at least her insecurities that were in her head, they're kind of cleared. Let's see. And then these next few lines, spread us all in purple, burning with a light of red jewel and furnace flame, are describing a sunset. And I think the light of red and the furnace flame point back to passion a little bit, because in Jane Eyre we have a lot of this fire and ice, and the fire will often represent passion. So the fact that we have these red tones with the sunset and it's described as a furnace flame is saying that Jane is kind of giving herself the license to be passionate. She's not being totally reasonable. She's taking time, enjoying this creation. Alright, and then we have the next descriptor that I thought was significant was the half heaven. Oh, that is a nice alliteration too. Which is significant. Jane is very religious, so for her to describe this in her mind as, oh, it's a half heaven, that's big. It's kind of like her Garden of Eden. Things are looking really good for her. It had its own charm. I just like that word. It describes the garden, what's about to happen very well. I like this phrase of it being a modest gem, because I think that kind of represents Jane, is that she would be the modest gem, because she's all her life been very plain, very reserved. But, she's a sunset. She, she's the gem rising. Alright, and this next part is very symbolic with the moon. Saying the word boast, I like a lot. It's very proud and upfront that the moon is about to have its moment, the moon being Jane. Also in romantic literature, the moon represents very strongly the feminine aspect, females, because in their minds it was like the sun was kind of masculine and the moon was kind of the woman reflecting the man's light. But tonight the moon is coming out. It's about to have its big moment, boasting the moon, but another point that the moon represents Jane, represents females, she was yet beneath the horizon, because what's about to happen is that Rochester will come in the garden. Jane and Rochester will first Jane will ask to leave Thornfield, and then it'll end with Jane realizing that Rochester intends to marry her and not Blanche Ingram. So this is all kind of a lot of foreshadowing, showing that the scene is right, the nature is open, like Jane is open, it's blossoming, it's at its prime, it's at its peak, it's ready. So that's kind of what these two paragraphs mean in relation to Jane Eyre and her proposal and her coming of age. Not sure how to wrap this up, but thank you for listening, I guess.